Hello friends, and welcome back to Farmyard Care. If you love the idea of growing your own food, raising a few animals, building a backyard that actually gives back, or simply finding a more grounded way to live, then you are in exactly the right place. Have you ever stood in your yard, looked at that open patch of grass and quietly wondered, could this really be enough? Most people assume true self-sufficiency only belongs to those with huge farms, expensive equipment, and years of inherited knowledge. But in my experience, that is one of the biggest myths in small-scale farming. The truth is, a single acre can do far more than most people imagine. An acre is 43,560 square feet, roughly the size of a standard city block. To some people, that may not sound like much. But when you understand how to shape the land, how to build healthy soil, and how to pair the right animals with the right purpose, that 1 acre can begin to produce eggs, meat, milk, honey, fiber, and even much of the fertility needed to keep the whole system going. That is where good design changes everything. On a productive small farm, each animal should do more than one job. Some provide food, some manage pests, some improve the soil, and some help turn waste into value. When those roles begin to connect, the land stops acting like a backyard and starts working like a living system. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through 11 carefully chosen animals that can turn 1 acre into a self-sufficient farm. More importantly, I'll show you how the output from one part of the homestead can become the input for another, creating a system that grows stronger over time. So settle in, and as we get started, think about your own space, your own goals, and what might be possible right where you are. And before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to Farmyard Care so you do not miss the practical ideas we share to help you grow more from the land you already have. Part 1. The Invisible Heroes of Waste. Our journey begins in a place many people overlook. Not with a cow, not with a goat, and not even with a flock of birds, but with a creature most folks would never expect to be one of the hardest workers on a self-sufficient farm. Number 1 on this list is the black soldier fly, or BSF. Now, before you dismiss it, stay with me, because this small insect may be one of the most valuable pieces of the entire system. One of the first things you learn after years of working with gardens, compost, livestock, and soil is that nature does not think the way we do. Nature does not create waste. It only creates materials waiting for the next job. That is exactly why the black soldier fly matters so much. These larvae are among the best waste-to-protein converters you can put on a small farm. They do not bite, they do not harass people, and they even help reduce the presence of common houseflies. Give them kitchen scraps, plant trimmings, and even certain types of livestock manure, and they go right to work. What looks useless to us becomes a rich, high-energy feed source packed with protein and fat, something your chickens, ducks, and fish can all benefit from. And the value does not stop with the larvae themselves. What they leave behind, known as frass, is a powerful natural fertilizer that supports soil life in a way bagged synthetic products never truly can. When your soil biology wakes up, your garden responds. Plants root deeper, growth becomes stronger, and the land begins to work with you instead of against you. So the black soldier fly teaches an important lesson right from the start. On a productive acre, the goal is not to get rid of every leftover. The goal is to put every leftover back to work. What looks like a mess today can become feed, fertility, and future harvests tomorrow when you learn to see the hidden value in it. Part 2. The feathered foragers. And once you have that steady, self-renewing protein source from your fly system, the next question becomes simple. Who puts it to good use? That brings us naturally to animals number 2 and 3, chickens and Coturnix quail. If you ask me, chickens are the backbone of almost every successful small farm. But for a 1-acre setup, I always lean toward practical, dual-purpose heritage breeds. Birds like Rhode Island Reds or Plymouth Rocks that can give you both dependable egg production and a solid, all-around farm presence. With a well-managed flock of around 20 to 30 hens, one family can collect an impressive number of eggs over the course of a year, often more than enough for the household and sometimes enough to share or sell. But eggs are only part of the story. On a truly self-sufficient acre, every animal has to earn its place in more than one way. When chickens are rotated through garden spaces after harvest, they become a cleanup crew, a pest patrol, and a soil working team all at once. They scratch through old plant matter, peck at insects and weed seeds, loosen the top layer of soil, and leave behind nitrogen-rich manure that helps prepare those beds for the next growing cycle. In other words, they do not just live on the farm, they actively improve it. Now, if space is tighter than you would like, that is where Coturnix quail become incredibly valuable. These little birds are some of the most efficient layers you can raise on a small footprint. They mature fast, often beginning to lay at just 6 to 8 weeks, and their eggs may be small, but they are nutrient-dense and highly valued by many people. What really makes quail stand out is how little room they need. In the space required for a single chicken, you can raise several quail, which makes them a smart option for anyone trying to get more production out of limited space. Together, chickens and quail remind us that productivity is not just about size. It is about function, timing, and smart use of every corner of the land. A small area, managed well, can give back far more than most people expect. And that is exactly what makes these feathered foragers such an important next step in building a farm that truly supports itself. Part 3. The Wetland Warriors. As we move into the wetter corners of the 1-acre farm, we come to animals number 4 and 5, ducks and fish. A lot of people choose chickens first and never give ducks a serious look, but that is a real mistake. Ducks bring something different to a small farm, and in the right setup, they can be incredibly valuable. Their eggs are larger, richer, and especially prized by bakers. Good laying breeds like the Khaki Campbell can produce an impressive number of eggs each year, often outpacing many chickens. But egg production is only part of the reason ducks deserve a place here. Where ducks really prove their worth is in pest control. They are relentless when it comes to slugs, snails, and ground insects, which makes them a huge asset around gardens and orchards. And unlike chickens, ducks do not constantly scratch through the soil and tear everything apart. That makes them much easier to work around established plants, especially in spaces where you want protection from pests without disturbing the roots. And from there, the transition to fish makes perfect sense. Ducks pair naturally with animal number 5, especially fish like tilapia or catfish. Even on a single acre, a small pond or tank system can become a powerful source of protein. Fish are some of the most efficient feed converters on the entire homestead. Tilapia in particular can turn feed into body mass at a remarkably effective rate. They can thrive on black soldier fly larvae, duckweed from the pond, and selected kitchen scraps, all while producing nutrient-rich water that can be cycled back into the garden. That is the bigger lesson here. When you stop fighting the land and start working with its natural conditions, everything changes. A wet area does not have to be a problem. It can become one of the most productive parts of the farm. Ducks and fish remind us that real abundance often begins the moment we choose harmony over control. Part 4. The Silent Multipliers. Now let's move to an animal that surprises a lot of people the first time they seriously look into small-scale self-sufficiency. Animal number 6 is the rabbit. If your goal is reliable meat production on a very small footprint, few animals can compete with what rabbits offer. A single doe can produce an astonishing amount of meat over the course of a year compared to her body size. When you compare that efficiency to larger livestock, the difference is hard to ignore. But experienced growers and homesteaders know that the rabbit's value goes far beyond meat. One of the biggest advantages of rabbits is what they leave behind. Rabbit manure is often called cold manure, which means it can go straight into the garden without needing a long composting period first. It will not burn plant roots the way hotter manures can. Instead, it adds steady fertility to the soil, bringing in valuable nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that support strong, healthy plant growth. That makes rabbits especially useful on a 1-acre system where every input matters. They are quiet, they take up very little space, and they ask for far less than most people expect. Yet they give back in multiple ways through meat, manure, and overall efficiency. In a world that often celebrates the loudest and largest solutions, the rabbit is a reminder that some of the most powerful contributors work almost unnoticed. Quiet systems managed well can end up sustaining the land for years. Part 5. The Miniature Dairy and Lawn Crew. Of course, a truly productive acre is not just about eggs and meat. If you want to round out the system, you also have to think about milk, pasture management, and useful fiber. That brings us to animals number 7 and 8, Nigerian dwarf goats and baby doll sheep. On a small homestead, full-size dairy cows usually ask for too much land, too much feed, and too much infrastructure. But these smaller animals offer a far more realistic path. Let's start with the Nigerian dwarf goat. These goats may be small in size, but they are remarkably productive. Most weigh only around 60 to 80 pounds, yet they can provide rich, creamy milk with a butterfat content far higher than what you get from typical cow's milk. That makes them ideal for cheese, butter, yogurt, and even handmade soap. On top of that, they are natural browsers, which means they do a great job clearing brush, weeds, and woody growth that many other animals ignore. In a small system, that kind of help matters. Then we have the baby doll Southdown sheep, one of the best companions for orchard spaces. Because they stand so low to the ground, they can graze beneath fruit trees without reaching high enough to damage the branches or developing fruit. That simple trait makes them extremely useful where larger sheep or goats might cause trouble. At the same time, they keep the grass down, provide fine wool, and can also contribute premium meat to the homestead. Together, these two animals prove something important. Bigger is not always better. On a well-designed acre, quality matters more than size, and the right small animals can do work that oversized livestock simply cannot do efficiently. The Nigerian dwarf goat and the baby doll sheep show us that when we stop chasing scale and start choosing function, the land begins to open up new possibilities. Part 6. The biological excavators. When most people hear the word pig, they picture a large, destructive animal tearing up good pasture and turning it into a muddy mess. But animal number 9 asks us to look again. This is the kuni pig, and for a 1-acre farm, it can be a much better fit than most people realize. Originally from New Zealand, the kuni is one of the most pasture-friendly pigs you can raise. Unlike conventional pigs that root aggressively and often rely heavily on grain, kunis do remarkably well on grass and forage. Their shorter, upturned snouts encourage them to graze more gently across the surface instead of digging deep and destroying the land beneath them. On a small farm, that difference matters. Rotate a pair of kunis through paddocks, and they can help you manage the ground in a very practical way. They clean up fallen fruit in the orchard, lightly work the soil surface, and leave behind nutrient-rich manure that helps build fertility over time. And when the season turns, they can also provide deeply flavorful pork and useful cooking lard, adding yet another layer of self-reliance to the homestead. The real lesson here goes beyond the pig itself. The kuni reminds us how often we judge based on old assumptions. But when you understand the true nature of an animal, you begin to see that the right breed, in the right system, can work with the land beautifully instead of against it. Part 7. The guardians and the pollinators. Every healthy farm needs more than producers. It also needs protection, balance, and the kind of quiet support that keeps the whole system thriving. That brings us to animals number 10 and 11, geese and honeybees. Geese are one of the most overlooked animals on a small farm, and that is a shame because they can be incredibly useful. They are excellent grazers, helping keep grass under control with very little supplemental feed. But what makes them stand out even more is their role as natural guardians. Geese are alert, territorial, and never shy about sounding the alarm. Whether it is a fox at the edge of the field, a stray dog near the birds, or a stranger coming onto the property, geese are often the first to let the whole farm know something is wrong. And above that same pasture, doing work that no other animal can replace, are the honeybees. No truly self-sufficient acre feels complete without them. A managed hive does more than produce honey. It increases the productivity of nearly every flowering crop on the land. When pollination improves, vegetable beds produce more, fruit trees carry heavier harvests, and the whole garden becomes more productive. On top of that, bees give you honey that stores beautifully and beeswax that can be used for candles, salves, and other useful products. Best of all, they require surprisingly little labor once established and gather what they need from the world around them. Together, geese and bees teach a powerful lesson. One protects the system and the other multiplies its abundance. When you care for the ecosystem as a whole, it returns that care in ways that go far beyond what you first expected. Part 8. The Closed Loop Symphony. Now we have met all 11 animals, but the real magic of this 1-acre farm is not found in any single one of them on its own. The real power is in how they connect. This is the closed loop symphony, and this is where a small piece of land begins to function like a living, self-feeding system. Look at the flow. Kitchen scraps and manure can go into the black soldier fly bins. The larvae from those flies become feed for chickens, ducks, and fish. The frass goes back to the garden as fertilizer. Chickens and ducks move through the land, eating pests and spreading manure left by the larger animals. Rabbits contribute their cold manure directly to the growing spaces. Nutrient-rich fish water can be used to irrigate crops. Bees move through the orchard and garden, pollinating the plants that feed the entire homestead. And through it all, the geese remain watchful, protecting the system. This is the beauty of a well-designed acre. Very little is wasted. Outputs become inputs. Waste becomes a resource. One part of the farm supports the next, and over time that means lower feed costs, healthier soil, and more productive harvests without constantly increasing labor or outside expenses. That is what a self-sufficient farm really looks like in practice. And maybe that is the deeper lesson nature keeps trying to teach us. We are often told that independence means doing everything alone, but the natural world tells a different story. Real strength comes from connection. Real resilience comes from interdependence. And the more clearly we see those relationships, the more beautifully the whole system works. Conclusion. The good news is you do not need to build all of this at once. In fact, you should not. Start simple. Begin with chickens in a compost system. Learn how to manage them well. Then add rabbits, then maybe bees. Layer by layer, season by season, an ordinary acre can become something extraordinary, a living system that feeds itself more efficiently with each passing year. That is why I always say farming is about more than food. Yes, it is about eggs, milk, meat, honey, fertility, and harvest. But it is also about rebuilding a relationship with the land. It is about understanding what healthy soil can do, what animals can contribute when they are chosen wisely, and what becomes possible when you stop seeing your backyard as empty space and start seeing it as potential. So now I want to hear from you. Out of all 11 animals we talked about today, which one surprised you the most? And if you were starting with just one, which would it be? Let me know down in the comments. If this video helped you see your land in a new way, be sure to like, share it with someone who dreams of building a small, self-sufficient farm, and subscribe to Farmyard Care. We have a lot more to explore together. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and take good care of your farmyard. See you soon.